Hey,
Hello.
hi, Joan. Um, I
Hi.
I want to start talking immediately, but I know I'm supposed to read a thing, so let me do that first. Here I go. Hello, you've turned into Unscripted. You've tuned, you haven't turned into it, maybe you'll turn into it, but you've tuned into Unscripted. Candid conversations about who gets to imagine the future. And this is a week-long series of conversations. And this is day 5. This is the last day. So you did it just in time. Congratulations. I'm Julia Mossbridge. This is Joan Mukogosi. Mukogosi. I'm sorry. Mukogosi. I almost got it right. We're streaming live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and we're recording. And we're here to talk about the amazing world of futuring, which is all about anticipating, imagining, and creating tomorrow, and why more people, not just a few powerful people, but everyone needs to have the time and resources to spend time and energy imagining possible tomorrows. So, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation has created this platform. Thank you very much. It's really phenomenal. These are crucially important conversations to be having. The chat is open, so go ahead and say hi to everyone and know that we're making stickers. And what the sticker is a snapshot or a little sound bite from the conversation that you think is interesting. So if we say something, especially if Joan says something that's phenomenal, she's going to say a lot of phenomenal things. So try to, choose the most phenomenal. No, you don't have to choose. Just put them all in the chat window and those will become stickers. And we'll try to get them to you after people vote on the stickers at rwjf.org/unscripted. We'll try to get them to you. So let's begin. Joan Mukogosi, welcome. I
Thank
want
you.
to, yeah, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk with you. So you're a sociologist, you're an Afrofuturist, you do work in technology and in the space of maternal health, AI, and the world of the future. And I want to ask you the same question I want to ask the audience. And I want to get to your background. But first, I want to ask this kind of quick question that may not be a quick question, but it's in what areas do you feel that futuring doesn't exist? I know that it's pretty common in like the AI circles, people think about it, but in other circles, it really doesn't. So, in what areas does futuring not exist that you think it could really benefit? And also in the chat, if you have opinions about this, please drop it in there. What do you think?
That's such a wonderful question. I'm trying to think. When I was thinking about this conversation today, I was reflecting on how I feel like right now the future feels very uncertain for a lot of people, and um, that it's sort of disconnected from daily life, right? That they're like day in and day out, there's really this difficulty tapping into what might come next. And so I don't know, I kind of want to answer that it feels distant in everyday life, but that seems kind of pessimistic. I think thinking about my work, places where I really want to bring futurism into the conversation and kind of sense some tension. I don't know, not in the technology space, but I think in some spaces in healthcare, I think it is in a lot of ways a very innovative place and industry filled with people who think a lot about the future. But I think, um, practically speaking, on the day to day, it's a place of urgency, and it's a place of sort of having to be rooted in the present. And so I think it's yeah, maybe a place where it could benefit from some daily futuring.
Okay, so we're going to come back to that. We're going to weave that answer. That's a beautiful answer. We're going to weave that in later into our discussion when we go more into the detail about your work in healthcare. How did you get involved as a futurist in the first place? And have you always been a futurist in a certain sense, or was it like was there a moment where you were like, boom?
Yeah, I mean, I was a futurist as a kid. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was like young. But recently I feel like I'm sort of like making a return to that childlike sense of futurism and like calling myself a futurist. It's something that feels new for me. But I think, yeah, as a kid, being obsessed with like outer space and, wanting to travel into the stars was always there. But there was a moment for me where I really sort of thought, oh my gosh, like maybe I could be a futurist. And that I owe all of it to Alicia B. Wormsley, who put up a billboard in my hometown in a neighborhood called East Liberty in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this is when I was in high school, and it went up in this neighborhood that was starting to gentrify. And so it was a historically Black neighborhood. And the billboard, it said, "There are Black people in the future." And it changed my life. I saw it every day when I would go to that part of town. It was where my braider was. So it was a place where I felt just so sort of, I felt a love for my community there. And it just really, like that statement really stuck with me. It felt like this um, affirmation for that love for my community, especially when we were seeing, Black businesses, Black families being pushed out of that area. And so, yeah, I think back to that billboard as a moment where I thought that statement, that futurist statement, really resonated with me. And I think back to that time a lot now that I'm reclaiming that sense of futurism in my work and just also personally. And yeah, I think I also want to say about this billboard, because it's gained a lot of popularity, and I think it, for the right reasons, but I think it's so important the place where it went up. Because that neighborhood, in the time since that it went up and then came down, that same billboard, it has been gentrified. Like it is unrecognizable from the time that that billboard went up. And I think, there's a couple ways to read that, right? Like on the one hand, you could think, okay, maybe that statement, "There are Black people in the future," failed. It was a failed prediction in that part of town, right? Because so many Black folks have been pushed out of that area in a way that feels very permanent. But I think on the flip side, and I think this is like the magic of futurism, is that it, I don't think, like, it's not necessarily a prediction, right? Like that statement, "There are Black people in the future," it's more of like a belief, or like a mantra. It's almost like meditative. And so it doesn't necessarily offer like a firm prediction. It's more of like a reminder that you can carry with you, and like a promise that you can hold. And so, yeah, shout out to Alicia. She changed my life with that billboard. And yeah, now that I'm sort of returning to futurist work, it's something that I think about all the time.
Wow. I mean, so first of all, I think that someone, if they could put in the chat window a link to that billboard, maybe they already have, I don't know. Second, it really feels like you had an art encounter, like the artist
Yeah.
herself, right, was a future. She was being a futurist by saying, like, okay, there's stuff going on around, whatever, whatever's going on around right now in the present. I'm telling you about the future, and it's like reaching out and grabbing you and saying, pulling you, forward in this hopeful way. I mean, that's powerful art, and you really got it, and it changed your life. And how did it work inside of you that you decided to go from that art encounter and that resonance to futuring as a
Yeah.
profession? Like, how did that work inside of you? Like, tell
I
me
mean,
more.
it's always been art, because after that, I discovered Octavia Butler and N.K. Jemisin, who's been mentioned, both of them have been mentioned in the past week. And so that stuck with me, books and art and other types of futuring in that sense. But it wasn't until I started working in the world of technology that I saw all of these really scary, honestly, visions of the future that were sort of touted by these techno futurists, right? About what our lives would be. And I just had this internal sense like this is not right. That's not the only future that we can look forward to. That there have to be so many others that we can build. And so that internal sort of like sense, again, inspired by this experience as a teenager, is how I started folding in futurism into my work, and now today sort of being a futurist, like with my chest. And yeah, I think, you know,
You said
the
with your
art,
chest,
yes, with my full chest, I can
like here I
scream
am.
like I am a futurist, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I love that
Um,
phrase. A futurist
yeah,
with
and
a chest.
so it's like it's a practice, right? It's something, I think, like I said earlier, that that statement is meditative. Like it's something that you work on in a sense, or that you carry with you, and it's something that I sort of intentionally fold into my work today. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So it really got deep inside of you and you were already carrying it, right? So she couldn't have reached out with that art if you weren't ready to be reached out to, you know. You were ready
Yeah.
to receive that and to turn around something inside of you that moved towards the future. Wow, that's really wild. That's beautiful. So about these just sort of dystopian techno futurist fantasies slash fears that our society seems to be having. I don't know how to talk about them except like that. But
Yeah.
what it, how do you work with that and remain hopeful? So like, can we talk a little bit about how futurism played into your work with or plays into your work with AI and with maternal health? If
Well,
you're
I like that, yeah, that question about remaining hopeful. I was journaling recently, and I had to remind myself that it's okay sometimes to lose hope, but not permanently, right? I think everybody has those moments where you really have that doubt, and you lose hope. But the most important thing is that that's a temporary feeling. It's a temporary place to be in. But no, in the technology space, like to your earlier question about spaces that are, welcoming to futurism, technology is one of those places, right? It's a field where people are constantly sort of like banking on the future and trying to create the future in the present. And I think, yeah, in at a time when we're really facing like a waterfall of dystopian sort of temptations, I guess you could say. I I like futurism. To me is something that allows me to say maybe not, right? It's not, again, like it's not a certainty, we don't know. But to say, okay, maybe not. Maybe there's another way that we can apply these tools. Maybe there's another way where we can source this energy. And so practically speaking, I think this comes even at a basic sense in how I like phrase my research questions, and sort of the empirical work that I do, like how I enter the field. It's with this idea to think of, to speculate, right? And to think of alternatives, as well as I'm sort of fact finding or trying to unearth the way things are happening right now. And I think, like, I think about this
can
with
you give
your
an
work.
example of that so I can understand that better?
Yeah, so I recently did this project on maternal health care, right? And the big question for me at the start of the research was how birth workers in particular are thinking about all the technologies that they use in their work. And are these systems serving them? How are they sort of helping their mission? And the catalyst for this work was the maternal health crisis. And that in particular, I think, is a place that it's a problem in society that really um, feels like a place of like a dead future, if that makes sense. It's like a place where, like when I reflect on sort of this problem that we have in society of maternal health care, it feels so hopeless in so many ways, and yet this project sort of forced me to look at the work that's happening every day, in clinics, in other healthcare environments by these birth workers, and what is helping and hurting them. And I think the research question, as I said, started out asking them about how they use these technologies in their work. But then thinking about the future, I thought, okay, maybe I should ask people about how they imagine this work changing, where they wish this work could go. How
Mm.
could this technology or this tool help them in their wildest dreams, right? If you could create a tool to assist your care, what would that be? And in the interview process, it was really, really generative. It helped break out of this really difficult space of wrestling with so much trauma, so much harm, so much loss, and to sort of think about what their work and what the world would look like if those problems, like how we could solve those problems. And so, yeah, it transformed the research. And also, I think, and this is one of my favorite things about like the social sciences, is that it, transformed like even in conversation during those interviews, like how they went. So, yeah, I think it's really important in the social sciences in particular to think about, to speculate.
Wow. So that I really appreciate you giving that example because I really notice when I'm working with people on futures work, one of the hardest things is for them to answer the question, well, what would it be like if you didn't have this problem? Like, tell me about what your day would look like if this just didn't exist. This was already solved. You don't have to even solve it, right?
Yeah.
But what would it look like if it was solved? And then we can work backwards and figure out what was done to solve it. And that works so much better than pounding on the problem from behind, you know? But so then I kind of want to ask you that same sort of question is what would your maternal health work look like if
Yeah.
those problems were solved? We weren't living in a dystopian technology future. It's 10 years or 5 years, whatever, choose your time interval from now. What then? Like, what then would you be doing? So I guess the sort of underlying question is, for you, is futuring about solving problems or is it about something else or both?
That's a great that's a great question. I mean, I guess starting with the last part of that question, if it's about solving problems, um, I think it's about I think it's about sitting with problems, if that makes sense. And sitting with them in that sort of like multi-dimensional way, right? How did we get here? What is it like now? But then, what could become of this? And that doesn't necessarily always result in a solution. But it does result in learning, right? It does result often in action, whether that's solving the entire problem or not. But in my own work, particularly when it comes to maternal health, I think like in my wildest dreams, um, I imagine a world in which the death toll, the loss, isn't our starting point, right? That we start from a place of well-being, where birthing people are cared for, where they have, time off and paid leave and care that is responsive to them and support that they need. Like I imagine a world in which that's where our research, that's where our work when it comes to, again, in healthcare, and in care surrounding birth and birthing people, that it starts from that place of well-being. Because yeah, that's not the case now.
Right.
And so thinking about that as the future, it inspires hope. I think going back to that question before, and especially at times when like maybe that hope is lost.
Yeah. So there are healthy parents and babies in the future.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
there are parents and babies experiencing well-being in the future. Yeah. So well, okay, could I just drive down that road a little further?
Yeah, let's keep going.
So let's imagine that's true. So we're actually in a world in which there is so much more care taken and so many more resources available that to support new life, new human life on the planet, including the parents and the child, right? Like everyone's involved in that. And what are the new things that now need to be supported, that need to be futured?
Oh, I love this. I love this question. Okay, I'm gonna situate myself in that world and reflect on this for a second. Um, Gosh, I think that opens up so much space for innovation. I think, and not purely in a technical aspect, right? I think it opens up new possibilities for connection between, you know, like patient and provider on a very basic sense, but also just like in the human sense with one another, right? I think it opens up um, so much possibility for like relating to one another when I don't know, in these very like precious moments. And I think it opens up time also. It
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm again like situating myself in that future. I imagine feeling like, gosh, you have so much more time and energy and space to think about um other parts of this infrastructure, right? Um, I think of even like I'm thinking even like in an urban planning aspect, right? Parks and trees
Well,
and sort of places to sort of expand. Like it opens up so much space to like broaden that sense of well-being.
wow.
Yeah.
So care becomes like this portal to like a blossoming of the entire city.
Yeah, like I'm thinking even like clean air and clean water. Yeah, all of the possibilities that open up when we improve like wellness in one space, right? Yeah. Oh, I love that question. It's really, yeah, I love this about your work is that it really like inspires this like emotive aspect to research, which sometimes can feel very rigid.
All the time. But, yeah, thank you. One of the reasons I realized that I never know I often don't know what I'm getting at until I get there. But this answer that you just gave about how sort of this new era of well-being for parents and children, this new respect for life, how that opens up all these all these opportunities in the space to recreate the space that supports health throughout the lifespan, right? This this makes me realize that when people are using rationality, to make scholarly arguments or to make political arguments or policy arguments, they're always being informed by their emotions. And somewhere, maybe unconsciously, they can either know or not know about that there could be this kind of
Mm,
future. They could either have this kind of hope or they could not have this kind of hope. And that can inform them so that things that seem dystopian to you because you have the capability to imagine this future may not seem dystopian to them if they cannot imagine it or do not have it even unconsciously in their
mm.
minds. And so that will drive a different kind of rational, so-called rational thinking. And so it makes me want to ask you, excuse me, what is dystopian? How do you define dystopian technology?
Yeah, I think, you know, thinking from a place, like thinking from my own and like internal sense of like my blackness, right? Um, Dystopia is very familiar to us, right? And I
So what does it
think,
feel like, if you don't
yeah,
mind?
in some ways it feels almost mundane. It
Mhm.
feels like every day. Um, and I think in the technological sense, there's this connection to me between this vision that a lot of like the tech bros have of AI and robotics like becoming your own personal servant or slave. And I
Yeah,
think, well, that's not new.
let's
That's
make some more
not new at all.
slaves.
That's exactly like that's a dystopia that is so familiar to this
Yeah,
country. We've
yeah.
been there before. And it's not a future. It certainly is the past. So it's that I think, dystopian technological futures feel very historical to me. But again, they also feel very mundane. Um, it feels like modern day. It feels like things that we are experiencing now, when it comes to so many issues, and not just when it comes to racism, but so many other ways that technology is really um, sort of trying to usher in this dead future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just going to be dark for a little bit, but like
We can sit in
it's
it for a
important to sit
moment.
in it,
Yeah,
right?
it
I
is. It
agree that that's
is.
an important
Yeah.
piece of futuring, right? Um, what's a dead future like? What it, if it's a future at all? If it's dead, is it a future? I mean, you know what I mean? It sort of almost
Yeah.
seems mutually exclusive. So when you talk about dead futures, I think that's a really interesting and important insight. But I sort of wonder, can it be a future if it's dead?
That's such a great question. I think um yeah, I think it can be. I think just because like when I say dead futures, it's a future that is hostile to life, right?
Yeah.
A future that is hostile to um our safety, our being collective, like our well-being. It is entirely hostile to that. So again, whether that's a future with fossil fuels, that's an entirely dead future for us and so many other beings that we're in community with, right? And I think sitting with the prospect of um that like mourning in advance almost um lights a fire underneath me to reject that dead future, to create that statement that says
Mhm.
there is life in the future.
Mhm.
Again, thinking of Alicia's work, how can we formulate that sort of affirmation, or that mantra that rejects that type of futurism, and how
Mhm.
can we sort of like what future feels alive, what future um yeah, what future nurtures our life, our well-being, and is, rather than hostile, is sort of welcoming, a future that sort of reaches out with that arm the same way that billboard reached out to me.
That's right. It's an active future that has a soul, you know.
Yeah, that you
It's
can relate to, right? Yeah.
yeah, like there's a this, you know.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
and thou, here we stand, right? With the future.
Yeah.
um, yeah. So you're using very wisely, it seems to me, in your work. You're using the idea of a dead future as a discernment lever. Like you're saying, I can imagine dead futures. This is what they look like. And instead of working from a place of dread and fear and just focusing on the dead future, which can paralyze people and can tend not to help psychologically and sociologically, you're saying, okay, there are those dead futures. How do we? I also see these live futures. How do we steer towards the live futures? So let's solve that problem from the future too. So let's imagine you're blossoming in your work as a futurist. It's 20 years from now. So it's what, 2045? You've done a lot of powerful work on the world stage, maybe on a planetary stage, maybe on multiple planets, right? Because you might also be an astronaut. NASA is looking for more women astronauts. We do better in space. So, um, and and this is a powerful tool that you've created about consciously choosing live futures. If you look back, what was the biggest hurdle that you had to overcome to get there? So 20 years from now, the biggest hurdle you had to overcome to get people to realize that they could and should choose the live futures.
Yeah, I think it's like suspending disbelief.
Mm.
I think um thinking about myself as a child futurist and the difference between then and now, um is, we develop as we grow up this sense of, that couldn't happen, or there's no way, and well, that's not real. And I think it is such a barrier to futurism, to futurist work. Sometimes you have to think of the most outlandish, ridiculous, otherworldly vision or idea of what could come next and work from there. Like from a place of like just complete, almost reckless, like what if?
Yeah,
Um,
reckless and fun.
Reckless and fun and, unexpected. Who knows? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I think that is really hard. And it's even harder in the face of the types of challenges that we're facing and that folks have faced throughout history, right? We can think of so many like instances and times where it seems like there's like that the impossible is impossible.
Yeah.
And we have those sort of out of the box and maybe a little bit nuts thinkers and visionaries to thank for rejecting that dead future, right? And so if I'm looking back 20 years from now, I would say to us in the past, you know, dream wilder, like,
Mm.
um, and you know, like engage that silly idea, because who knows, maybe it'll spark um that piece of knowledge that was missing this entire time, or that idea or that sense of urgency that wasn't there before. And I don't know, I think it's again really important to do in these somewhat rigid spaces, whether it be in the technological and the research, in healthcare and so many other places, to just spend some time thinking about your wildest dreams.
And not shutting them down and not letting anyone else shut them down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a beautiful description. I sometimes feel that we get so afraid of dreaming because we think our dreams won't come true.
Yeah.
We get so afraid of the positivity and the hope because we don't want to have wishful thinking. So we shut ourselves down and we just think about today, maybe tomorrow, but not 5 and 10 and 20 years from now. But um, that's a disease.
Yeah, and I also like lately I've been thinking a lot about how to sustain a practice of futurism,
Yeah.
because I think, it's important to do that work and also remain present. Like the act of futuring it requires a lot of work. Like it requires um so many things at the same time. Like in some ways it requires some real like dedication and sort of rigor, and in other ways it requires like playfulness and like complete release. And how do you like sustain all of those things at once? Like how do you hold all of those practices and methods at the same time, but also how do you keep it going even when you're not like seeing results, or even when things get worse? Like how do you keep tapping in? And I think it goes back to what I was journaling earlier, which is that sometimes you'll lose hope, but it can't be forever. And so yeah, I don't know, I'm reflecting a lot about this. I don't have an answer yet. This is something that I really want to explore, but like what are those methods to sustain futuring, and to not burn out from this practice. Yeah.
Well, one of them has got to be to remember that just like everything, the future is nonlinear. I mean, it's not like it's going to be like, well, things are getting better and better and better and better. And better. That never happens. It doesn't happen in nature.
Nope.
It doesn't happen in human culture. It's not the way it is. And so it's like we have to forgive ourselves and be like, all right, yeah, we're doing one of those go backwards, 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing, or vice versa. But the other piece I want to ask you about, specifically Afrofuturism, and Afrofuturing, is what is this mothership thing? I think I have a. Do you think about that at all, or is that not something you think about? This is something I've been hearing about, and I feel like I have an innate sense of what it is, and I'm like, yes, let's go to the mothership. But I
This
don't
is
really
not,
know.
I'm not familiar with this.
Oh,
No.
really? I've been hearing about
Yeah.
it. Lonnie Brooks yeah, this idea. It feels like the mothership is in the future. Like it feels like the mothership is this like almost like the place where you described, or the future that you described, where life matters, and like
Mm.
you matter, no matter who you are, you matter. And And that's the way the culture behaves too. It's not just
Mm.
lip service, it's like the way things work. And there's community and there's, reckless fun, silliness, dreaming wilder. That's what it sounded like to me. That was my painting internally in my mind of the mothership. But this is not something that you think about as an Afrofuturist.
I wouldn't say it's not because it's reminding me of all these things that really inspire me in Afrofuturism. It's yeah, it's not a like topic that I've engaged with like before now, but as you're talking, it reminds me of the practice of like the concept of unconditional love, right? And that sort of being the welcoming of the mothership. And
Huh.
yeah, it's just making me think of like Black feminists and the work that they do, right, on sort of that return to care. And even like I mean, now I'm like talking out loud. It makes me think about like how like caring for one's self and one's community in the present is an act of futurism, right? Like that sort of um like dedication to like reaching that future, right?
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know if this is making sense, but
No, no, you're yes, I mean, yes, yes, keep going.
no, yeah, I don't know. I again like even thinking again about this like idea of sustainability, like part of that I think is also um like like that like almost that like meditation for oneself in the present. Yeah, it's so multidimensional. And I think this is reminding me of Adrienne Marie Brown's like four-dimensional futuring, right? So
Cool.
connecting to your past, so your ancestors, rooting yourself in the present, and that's where like our sense of place, both like physically, right? Universally, so on Earth and in our solar system, and then the forward dimension, right? So everybody and everything that is to come. But then also that fourth dimension of just expanding outward, right? So everything that we're in community with also does that same work of past and present rooting and future speculation. And I think that last dimension, that connection, like making sure that you're doing that work in community with other people, is so vital. So yeah, I can't wait to like dive into more of this mothership stuff because it's sparking all of these
Yeah,
connections for me.
I'm excited. And also with your work on maternal health, like I think you might actually have a
Yeah,
lot to think about the mothership and how our relationship at this, especially when the birth and death, like when the veil is lifted and you really see
absolutely.
things in a raw way. People are at the most strong and they're most fragile. And that reminds me of my internal know nothing representation of the mothership,
Mm,
where people can be safe and be their strongest and most fragile.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So we only have a few more minutes left, and I would love to ask you, like, who do you hope in the future hears this conversation like you heard that billboard? What kind of person would you like to reach out to and say, you know what, you're a futurist and you're going to help shape the future?
It may sound cliche, but I really want to reach out to young people. I feel so strongly that we need voices affirming, just like that billboard, that there are futures that are alive, and that futuring is something that everyone has access to, and it can be as personal as a mantra or a meditation, and it can and should be as collective as conversations with people in your community. And it can be as active as like all these different forms of engagement. And I think, um, yeah, I think it's a really difficult time for a lot of people, but I think for young folks in particular, who are often burdened with being our like de facto futurists, right? By the simple fact that they got more time left. but I think, I would encourage, um, yeah, young people to sort of like tap into that inner futurist and search for that inspiration about like what's to come, and how they can sort of shape the many futures that are possible. Yeah, I feel very strongly about this.
I think that's beautiful. I think people will hear that and feel that inside of you, as well as your words. And I
Yeah.
also think there's no way you shouldn't also go be an astronaut, by the
I'm like, there's still time, you
way.
know? I really
100%.
think there's still time. But yeah, I needed this when I was in high school. I needed that hand out, and I think, yeah, I just want to affirm that, there's a future that is alive. So yeah,
Yeah, let's make that future together. I'm into it.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you do.
Oh my gosh, it's a pleasure. And I think, the exciting thing about this conversation is it it's a moment for us, I think, to reflect on, like, again, thinking about this like multidimensional like time situation. It's a moment for me to sit and reflect on like how I got here, and also who we're all in community with. And it's so great. I can't wait to see the chat and folks who are sort of engaging in the conversation. But like building that fourth dimension, right? Expanding futurism as far as it can reach, I think is so vital. That like democratization of that like futurist thinking that we can do together is so important. And yeah, I feel so lucky to be doing this with you.
Yeah, same. And when you said, you sparked something in me when you said the democratization, which is that the great thing is you can future while it's more fun to future in community, you can future in your own mind. And
Yeah.
that's a really powerful thing. It's like an area that if you take back your mind from the outside attention pulls, and which is a hard thing to do, but if you can future in your own mind, and that builds at least your world, and then that starts building worlds around you, and you'll find your people.
Yeah,
If you don't have your people, you'll find your people if you start doing that, because you can't not be authentically connected to yourself when you're doing that.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's inspiring more journaling to come. I have
Yeah.
like more questions to ask myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Data and Society Research Institute I hope they have a really good idea about how lucky they are to have you on board. Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're good people, but they better know. Okay. Well, Joan, thank you so much. I have a thing I need to read, and then I want to hand the mic over to you for the last word. Let me get to the thing. One of the hardest parts of this job is, for me anyway, is thinking I'm going to mess up. Okay, on this part. Okay. So first of all, it's the last call to drop any sticker ideas in the chat. I think we had like 800 in our conversation. Other people might have more. And you can always go to the email that they drop in the chat and add more. But if there's one place where you're going to go, I would like to direct you to rwjf.org//unscripted, where you're going to be able to go vote on the different stickers at the end of this week, sometime next week, and actually get stickers for free for your skateboard, your laptop, your water bottle, wherever your child's wall, wherever you want to put them. And I think that's it. Joan Mukogosi, I want to thank you for being here. And I want to pass the mic to you for the last word to end the week.
Yeah, I want to say thank you too. And it's been such a wonderful week of reflection and speculation. So yeah, my hope is that everybody listening is sort of defining what futuring means to them and taking it into the world with them every day, but also into their communities. So yeah,
Amen. Thank you.
thanks.